Alright, welcome to this video. I'm going to redesign the eToro Investing app. I actually did a redesign on this some while ago, but I'm not too sure anymore about my design. I think if you compare it to the existing UI, it looks way better, but I think I can still improve it, because I've been reading some things on this site and I think I've grown my UX skills quite a bit since then. So I'm going to redesign my redesign, and this video is going to be a two-part series. In the first part, I'm going to show you my strategy behind the new design. I'm going to show you how I would start a typical UX project, how I would analyze the current interface before I start designing anything. And then in the second part, I'll show you how I make wireframes, how I set up a design system, and then finally design the whole thing. So stay tuned, and maybe you might learn something. Also, a heads up, if you're not into UX, I think this might be boring as hell. All right, so let's dive right into the first part of this UX series, the strategy and the analysis. So what I like to do before a project like this is really get to know the product or the business. And I do this by doing some research about the real value proposition of the product and its benefits and features and how they are related. And you might be wondering, why is this important? This is a UX project. It's not a marketing or a branding project. Well, I think that if you understand what the product is all about, what its mission and vision is, it can help you to come up with some interesting, innovative features later on that you wouldn't think of when you were just focusing on the current interface. So I tried to get this information down as clear as possible. I tried to get a real feel for the product and the brand. Then I move on to the goals. I try to get as much information as I can about the business goals and why they want to invest in user experience. And the reason why is that I want to define the correct KPIs to start measuring right now before the design and after. Then I also, in this early stage, reassure the client that even though it seems that we're going to do something intangible, it seems that we're going to just draw cute little boxes and ask a lot of annoying questions, in the end, we're really solving a business problem. Some designers or some agencies, they get a bad rep because they design for themselves or they design for designers instead of for the real audience. And that's something we really want to reassure the client of, that we're really going to solve a business problem here, that we're focused on them, on their goals, and not just on the latest design trends that we see on Dribbble or Behance. Then I move on to the user, and I always start with creating some basic personas. I don't dive too deep in this. I don't spend too much time on the user research because I think it's less valuable than the user testing. We want to get to the user testing as quickly as possible because basically in this phase all we're doing is making assumptions, and we want to test these assumptions. So I just try to get some important information about the personas, about their demographics, their behavior, about their goals, what they need to complete these goals, and what features might be interesting to serve these needs as well. And this might look like this for the eToro app, but in general I would try to get as quickly to the user testing as possible. So in the user testing phase, I tried to come up with the best questions for user tests, for user surveys, etc. In this case, I don't have much to show you because it wasn't a real project, but if it were, I would add all the links to surveys, to test results, to maybe even session recordings. I would add everything here so that we can always come back to it and check it for useful data. Then when I'm confident that I have some real usable data, I can start focusing on the experience, and I can start preparing for an audit on the current user experience, on the current interface. Before I start, I always try to keep these questions in mind when evaluating an app, when you're really diving deep into an interface, it's easy to get lost in the features and forget about some general basic UX rules. So before I start, I always try to keep these questions in mind because it helps me to stay focused on the real thing. Then another thing that I do is try to map out the ideal user journey for the product. And I basically try to list every step, every phase the user goes through before they become a big fan of the product and recommend it to others. So basically this ideal user journey is divided into 3 stages. There's the introduction stage where the user logs in for the first time. They go through the onboarding. And if all goes well during this stage, they will be engaged enough to move on to the next stage, which is the exploration stage. This is the time where the user will use the basic features of the app. And if the app does its job, then the user will use it frequently until eventually they become so engaged that they use the app daily and start recommending it to other people. So that's what an ideal user journey looks like. And for every step of this journey, I try actually to list some concrete interactions, design elements, or features that will help the user move on to the next step. And I do this actually for every screen. So I get something like this, where I have an overview of the screen, of the user goals on this screen, and the user needs on this screen. And then based on this information, I can start adding suggestions about changes to make, things to add, things to remove. And I do this for every screen, for every step of the ideal user journey. After this whole process, I will have an entire list of improvements, suggestions, things to add, things to remove, that I can use for making my wireframes and eventually for designing the new interface as well, which I'll show you in the next part.